Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Mark Osborne. Look, it's a real honour and privilege to be here today. Look, Kerikeri is very, very important to me, as is the far north and as is Northland. I now live in Taipark, in the far north with my wife, and I was very lucky 17 years ago to meet her here in Kerikeri. Look, why I'm here today is a number of reasons, not least the fact that we now have two beautiful children. Kira is 10 and Brianna is 6, and they attend school in Wanganui. Many people say to me, gee whiz, you're jumping into this, it's pretty tough. Tough on your kids, tough on your family. Well, actually not. That's exactly why I'm here today. I want my kids to have an education as good as anywhere else in the country. I want my kids and our kids to come out of that education into jobs here in Northland so that they can have jobs and careers here and build strong communities and strong families in Northland. I accept there are many challenges here in the north. Our roading network is not as good as it needs to be. The investment needs to increase. And in government, I can make a change. I can be part of an active national government that delivers for Northland. As you can see, I'm not a small guy. I'm not going to fade away into the background. And I think it's quite rich that people are claiming some of the announcements so far as their own. I've been in the ear of those ministers ever since I was elected as candidate for the National Party just on 2 weeks ago. And we've got some real traction already, and I'm proud of that. And we're going to keep being in people's ears to make sure that we get the results that we need. Northland is a great place, and I'm a proud Northlander. And I'm really looking forward to having the opportunity to take Northland forward on your behalf, on our behalf as proud Northlanders. I don't underestimate the challenge that we're facing in the coming 2 weeks to get over the line. There's some great people here, some great candidates, but in government we can actually make things happen. I look forward to seeing the Puhoi to Wellsford motorway roll out. I look forward to being part of a government that makes the RMA more user-friendly. I look forward to a positive and prosperous Northland that enables all of us to move forward together. Northland is a huge area, we know that. Well over 4 hours from north to south and 3 hours across. Many, many small towns and communities. We need to understand and respect those communities and cultures and our differences. But we need to come together as one Northland and stand united, and I look forward to being that person to stand for us all in Wellington to make the positive change that we need. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I seek your support to elect me as the next Member of Parliament for Northland in the National Government.
Mr. Chairman, my fellow candidates, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the chance to talk to you tonight, albeit briefly. First of all, we're having a by-election in circumstances which you have not been told about, and in any democracy you should know why now. You shouldn't be coming within 2 weeks of the election being kept in the dark. I regret that. And I think one party owed you the truth well before the last election. You know, some crude American once described politics as being who gets what, where, when, why and how. Well, I hope we're not quite like that. But I bet people are thinking all around the Northern electorate, in all the small villages and hamlets and towns these last few nights, what really is it for me? Is there a future for me and my children and children yet unborn in this part of the world? Is the glorious part of New Zealand, which was once our capital, to be always forgotten in recent New Zealand politics? And for 77 years, you backed one political party with the exception of 1966 to 1969. All the rest of the time, voting solidly, and the question is, what did you get in return? Everyone knows that loyalty is owed both up and down. What have we got in return here? Well, this is the fact. We have more low decile schools, that's 1 and 2. Over 50% of the electorate schools are low decile 1 or 2 than nearly everywhere else in the country. And you can't solve that with simplistic answers about caring for education. You solve it by picking people's economy up as a person, as an individual, as a family, and a community, and as a province. They say we're a backwater up here. They say lots of things about us. But what they all have to admit is, we here have been forgotten for far too long. We've been Cinderellaised and marginalised and expected now to go along with a slogan that says, working for Northland. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right as we speak, there is a company up here about to close down, going broke, 250 men, mainly men, and all their families are going to lose their work up here. And it's because of economic policies designed not for export provinces like Northland, but rather the overseas owned banks and insurance companies and money traders and speculators of Auckland. And in this election, Northland for the first time for a long time has the chance of a lifetime to make a statement and send a message that the political power brokers of Wellington, in the corridors of power, and all those that should not be there but still control the country, will never ever forget. But you pass this chance up, it will not come again. Not in your lifetime. So these are critical days, 15 days out. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot have the median family income being 51,000 when the national average is 72,000 and think that's a fair go. You can't talk about education at any level unless the families are wealthier. And I'm not talking about just families unless business is wealthy here. It's hard to believe, you know, with all the talk about Northland being what it is, and Mayor Mai and Whangarei the other day said it, and the rest say it as well, we're a backwater. How can the closest part in communications, defence, foreign issues and trade be Northland and be a backwater? This is other things upside down. And I want you in this election to turn it the right way up for the first time for a long time. This electorate is in the top half of the export wealth creators of this country. So how come all the figures are down the bottom? It's because they tell you that they want to represent you, but the moment they get to Wellington, they never, ever raise a finger. Now I'm going to close by saying this to you. I've proven in 10 days, 12 days flat, what you can do for Northland. We've got a bridge a day. They all know that. And second, 2 days ago, I said, Mr. Key's going to come up here. He's going to come up here and say he's going to wind out the broadband real fast. Well, the way we're going, if another 2.5 years, we'll be all solved. Because they ignored you. And think if they darken the skies now, somehow you're going to forget. Ladies and gentlemen, I make you one promise. You vote for me, and future in this country, in the corridors of power, there'll never be an economic or social issue of any importance without they first ask themselves, yes, but what does Northland think? Now send them a message.
Kia ora, good evening everybody. Thank you all for coming out tonight to hear us, the candidates, and why we are standing, but more importantly so that you can ask us questions about issues that are important to you. For those of you who didn't attend this last year, my name is Willow-Jean Prime. I am the only candidate that stood in the general election last year who put my hand up to represent Northland. You will see from those of us up here, I'm the only female candidate also standing in this by-election. I love Northland. This is home for my family. I was born and raised in Moerewa. My father, who is in the audience here, Barry Downs, worked for 20 years for New Zealand Rail until they closed the Ortidia, or downsized the Ortidia railway station. My two grandfathers worked for AFCO, one as a fitter and turner and the other as a foreman. I attended the local primary school there and secondary school. Once finishing secondary school, I went to Waikato University, where I studied towards a conjoint degree, a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Laws. I then practiced as a barrister and solicitor in Wellington for a number of years, while also completing by distance my Masters in Laws, which I received first-class honours. I am now studying towards a PhD in law, however that's been on hold since the general election last year and now this by-election. I am passionate about Northland. I'm hardworking, I'm honest, and I'm local. I am currently a Far North District Councillor. I was elected in 2013 as the youngest Far North District Councillor. I polled second highest to the Deputy Mayor, and this is my third election in the last 18 months. So I have some campaigning experience. Anybody who wants to stand in any future elections, contact me. I can give you some hints. But I am standing in this by-election because I believe Northland deserves better. That's why I stood last year, that's why I'm standing again this year. We need somebody who is absolutely dedicated to getting a better future for Northland. I'm married to Wilie-Jean Prime. He's a secondary school teacher at Bay of Islands College, and we are raising a young family here. We want a good future for my daughter and for all of our families. There is so much that needs to be done in Northland, and this by-election has just been fantastic, because what a way to highlight that to the rest of the country, to highlight that to government, and to highlight that to all political parties. The issues I am campaigning on, and I was first off the block, these were my messages first, are unemployment, infrastructure and roading, and vibrant communities. I have first-hand experience of our issues in terms of infrastructure. We have been lobbying central government for more support for our communities. In terms of roading, last year we had a flood event. Over $20 million worth of damage was done to our roads in the far north. The government promised us a 90% plus subsidy for fixing those roads. When we went back to them with a list of roads that needed to be fixed, hello, sorry, we're not going to fix those roads. We might do a little scratch and patch job over here, and we are continuing to knock on their door to get them to honour that promise. Now, in terms of roading, the subsidies have been taken away from us. So now, as ratepayers, we are required to fund this necessary infrastructure in our communities, vital infrastructure for economic development and for quality of life, from our ratepayer base. We have a small ratepayer base with the lowest average incomes in the country, and we are expected as a region to fund this infrastructure. It's simply not affordable. We are already paying far too much financially, but also socially. I'm going to stop there and actually open it up for questions. I'm really interested in what are the issues that are important to you, and to be able to answer your questions. But once again, just in conclusion, I am somebody who is hardworking, honest and local. I am absolutely passionate about Northland, and I believe we deserve better from our government.
Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. I'd just like to thank everybody for this opportunity. I'm really happy to be here and comfortable to be here, participating in this democratic process. It's quite interesting that I only got the message that this Wellsford meeting was on at about midday today. So, and I had to come down from Aipara. Drove all the way down from Aipara, from one end of the region down to, I suppose this is the boundary. Great drive. I love Taitukura, I love Northland. It's a great drive. I enjoyed myself and my crew in our vehicle who came down here. We thoroughly enjoyed it. We're very excited to come here. So apart from the no notice, and that's okay, I'm getting used to it. I'm getting used to it. The media, the mainstream media is ignoring the smaller parties. The mainstream media is actually, I don't know whether under the instruction to kind of stay away from the smaller party conversation and policies and ideas. Perhaps this is because the bigger parties have control and they like to hold control. This is one of the reasons why I chose to stand, was to make sure that this government is accountable, make sure that it's accountable not only to you here today, but also thinking about its responsibilities to tomorrow and to all of our young people. There's some young people in here, and I'm really great to see all the young people that are in here, regardless of whether you can vote or you can't vote. The democratic process, I think, it's not perfect, but it's what we have, and how we utilise it and how we participate in it. That's the big thing that I'm here to support today. This is a general election. It's a by-election. I'm on the Māori roll, but that's okay because I'm Māori. But the participation within the democratic process is what I'm really excited to participate in today. I'm from the Mana movement. The Mana movement was created in opposition to the way that we felt Māori rights were addressed. But we're growing from there. We've grown from there. That was many 30 years ago. And we're growing from there. And we're trying to encapsulate how we can benefit the entire population and society of this country. So I'm excited to be a part of that. And so any questions that you come at me, I've been given full authority by the executive of the Mana movement to answer every question as I deem fit. So if you want to put a question to me and you want a yes or a no, I'll give it to you. I will give it to you here and tonight. I'm not going to muck around. I'm not going to muck around and tell you that I've got to go back to ask my caucus, or I've got to go and ask my leaders, or I've got to go ask somebody from Wellington or from another area about what we can do for the Northland province, for our region. I'm very passionate about supporting kaupara. The snapper beds are down there, and I don't have a snapper classic on the 90 mile unless kaupara is protected and looked after and make sure that environment is there, not just for the kaupara but for the entire country. So I'm very passionate about supporting kaupara. The issues that I'm here for today is to make sure that if there is any activity in our harbours, that they are so accountable that if there is any issue whatsoever, that it's going to be taken care of immediately or even is never going to exist. I want a zero policy on any issues happening to our environment. And as I understand it, the National Party has allowed Stat Oil to prospect into the kaupara all the way up to Te Rerenga Wairua, and they have been given a clause in their licence that if there's any damage done to your coastline and to your harbour, they don't have to be accountable. This is an issue to your community because this is a part of why we live in the rural area. Because we're farmers, we're fishermen, we love to live here. We don't want to live anywhere else. I don't want to live anywhere else. I want to live here in the Taitukara in Northland. I want my children to live here. I want my grandchildren to live here and love being a part of the Northland community. I went overseas. I've done a whole big trip overseas, worked in the railways, I've worked over in the transport, worked in building. But I came home, even though when I was a kid and my dad put me in the Kumra Gardens and everyone else was going off to play rugby, we had to stay and do the gardens, and I swore I'd never come back. It was the greatest thing that I missed. I missed coming from a community that was based upon principles that were handed down generation to generation to generation. And I'm very staunch about my tikanga, about protocols and making sure that principles are upheld, whether it's in the parliament, whether it's in council, or whether it's in my own home. And so I'm very strong about following those principles, and we need to make sure that this government, whoever gets to stand, are held accountable to us here in Northland. So make sure those questions that you ask me and ask them, make them strong and make them proud, because this is our opportunity to hold them accountable. Kia ora tātou.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for making your time available to come out tonight. By way of introduction, my wife and I bought a house in Northland 20 years ago. Then we bowled that little old house and built a permanent house for ourselves, which we've lived in for the last 10 years. My father was born in Te Kaupuru, and my great-grandfather was Judge Rogan of the Maori Land Court and spent his life in boats going around the kaipara, resolving disputes mostly. Now, in 2012, the Kaipara District Council finally announced that it had bankrupted its own district. It had done that by allowing an ill-conceived sewage scheme to go completely and utterly out of control. A number of members of the community, myself included, had been pleading with the government watchdog, the Ombudsman and the Auditor General and the ministers to do something about the problem because we knew that something terrible was going to happen. We were told to go away. We didn't know what we were talking about, and it was all under control. We were particularly told, in no uncertain terms, to go away by the Auditor General. So then it all hit the fan, and a project that had been consulted with the community for $17 million was billed out at the end of the day at $62 million. And the council turned round and said they were sorry. The Mayor wrote a letter to every ratepayer and said, "We're sorry, we screwed up." And we thought, well, that's good. That's a good sign. We're going to be able to sit down with people who are prepared to say they're sorry, and we'll be able to work out a solution. When we tried to do that, the council turned on us and said, as far as we're concerned, everything we ever did was legal until a court says it wasn't. So we said, well, if we can't negotiate with you, and we really would like to because we know that litigation is expensive and difficult, then we'll have to go and ask the High Court to judicially review your decisions. They said, good luck with you. Good luck to you with that. So we filed in the High Court an application for judicial review, which is a process that is available to ratepayers and taxpayers if they think that a person in authority has made an unfair or incorrect or unjust or illegal decision. We prepared our case, and while we were doing that, the Member of Parliament, who has disappeared for reasons you haven't been told about, worked in collusion with some government-appointed commissioners to develop a parliamentary bill that was passed before our case came before the judge. When the judge looked at our evidence and our case, he said, in his judgment, these people would have been totally vindicated had it not been for the actions of Parliament in passing that validation legislation. Now, since then, there has been no dialogue with the government-appointed commissioners about resolving the issues. They have gone on applying penalties to people who justifiably withheld their rates until this mess was sorted out. And now the Kaipara District Council has taken something of the order of 200 different ratepayers to the District Court. These are people like myself who have never owed anyone any money at any time in their lives, taken them to court to forcibly obtain from them the rates, the illegal rates that they charged. Now, I'm standing because I want the people of New Zealand to know that this has happened. Because this is not the end of it. This is now the national government's way of dealing with crises in local government. What they do is they pass retrospective legislation to cover up the damage that's been done and fit the ratepayers up with the result. So if you're a ratepayer in Auckland, brace yourself, because the scams that are being perpetrated behind closed doors at the moment are going to be fitted onto you, the ratepayers. And if you're a ratepayer in Northland, the same thing is going to happen to you. The Serious Fraud Office, who refused to look at what was going on in Kaipara because there was a relationship between the director, the then director of the Serious Fraud Office, and the Auditor General herself, refused to look. They are now looking at the scams that are going on in the Far North District, and when they get close to the action there, I will lay you money that the government will pass retrospective validating legislation to fit the ratepayers up, because the government has sponsored the creation of the Local Government Funding Agency. This is a group of financiers who are able to borrow money offshore and lend it to local government. You, every ratepayer in this country, is going to be responsible for the debts incurred by every other local authority in the country. So you people who live in Northland, who live in Whangarei, you are going to be carrying the can for Auckland when it goes belly up. Thank you very much.
Chairman Gordon, Wellsford people, fellow candidates, it's a real privilege to stand in front of you and tell you why I'm here. You say that this area is nobody's land, or you're not nobody's child, and we have a lot in common with you where I come from. I come from Okaiho, north of Whangarei, exactly the same issues. You've got this problem with the dominance of Auckland over you, and the solutions that fit Auckland take over all. You're not getting your road sealed, we have the same problem up there. And there's a reason for it. There's a question from the audience before of why is it? And I'll come to that. There's an ill wind that brings no good. And we've got some good here. We've got a knife-edge election. Northland can actually say something for all of rural New Zealand. It's actually been hammered by the settings. No interest in controlling the exchange rate. There's policies to do with housing that could affect that. We just haven't managed to have settings that make us flourish. And when we flourish, all of New Zealand flourishes. The way road funding was allocated was a formula called the Transit New Zealand Project Evaluation Manual, which might not be right. You put the projects up and evaluated them, you got your seal extensions, and it was spread across New Zealand. But it did not suit this current government, and they've dismantled that entirely. Strategic fit is what counts, and strategic fit overrides everything. Strategic fit has now said we'll have 10 bridges, just like that. Those bridges, some of those bridges actually don't need replacing, some do. But what about when you go north? You've all been north to the Bay of Islands, you've got highways that stop for 2 days in a row, State Highway 1. What about the strategic fit of that? So I'd like to see one of our policies is actually go back to that democratically fair process that evolved. What we're heading into, and it's of great concern, is a sort of soft apartheid. Apartheid, the two parties are rural New Zealand and metro New Zealand. And we're getting screwed badly, and this is the first opportunity anywhere in New Zealand where we've actually had a chance, and a good chance, it's now knife edge, and possibly over knife edge, to actually influence. And there's not a great risk here. Peter Dunn might have a little bit more power for his sort of fluffy hair, but we're not going to disrupt the government, all right? We're just going to let the government know that Northland's here and rural New Zealand needs to be recognised, not used and abused. So where's focus, and how did focus form? The Focus Party, we stood in the last election. We got broadened out. Oh, we'll find policies for all New Zealand. We canned the New Zealand Rural Party. The dumbest thing we ever did, because the rural people actually need strong representation. The founders of the Focus Party, and I was one of them, we were on the Northland Regional Land Transport Committee. I've been on there 12 years. We had that allocated process just trashed in front of us. We had Matakoi bridges to be built, 2012, struck off the list, called Archive, put on the list now because it's got strategic fit, and we just have been whipped around without any fairness and consideration. We've got to do some stuff there. And there's some policies that we really need to get in place. The first policy that we would insist on, should we have that opportunity to be required for confidence in supply, is the GST on rates, the net GST on rates, to be left with the local authorities. And the same goes for the tax on fuel. We've got to do some serious stuff there. What we've got to do in this electorate, which is essentially a rural electorate with populations of about 4,000 or 5,000, is just ensure that what's good for Northland actually is good for our electorate. To date, what's good for Northland has been beautiful for Whangarei, and we've hemorrhaged. If you're talking about destroying people, we've got people going broke at the moment up north because the payout for dairy companies are going down, all right? And the banks have come along to them and said, sorry mate, your property's dropped value, so your interest rates go up. So income's gone down, interest rates gone up, Bank Mediation Act, we need that. So there's some stuff we actually need to do to actually reform this country. And we're going cycles of reformation, and we're due for another cycle of reformation. Not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, not throwing the RMA down the drain, but actually doing some sensible stuff of looking at why we've got so many bloody laws, 250 now policemen going around farms trying to find if a guy's not wearing his hard hat. A few people die on a quad, so sad, but there's 25 to 30 suicides because they're getting the finger on them that the Bank Mediation Act would say. So I've said enough on that one. Took great liberty, Chairman, but I have to say it.
Well, I'll have to ask you to keep it brief. We're running out of time. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, my name is Rueben Grieve, representing the ACT Party, and I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight to take part or participate in democracy. This is what we're all doing here today. It's about an exchange of ideas, exchange of views, and standing up for what you believe in and giving voters a choice. What's ACT going to do? ACT is going to tell you that what we need is a government MP, a government that is going to free up this economy, reform the RMA. That's one of the biggest blights and handbrakes on this economy. This is the reason that we're not prospering, is because of excess regulation. Growth, don't worry about growth, government. Don't you worry about growth. Growth happens. It's in our blood. We're all business people, we're workers, we're entrepreneurs, we're all those people. We want to be richer. We want to grow, and we will grow. The only thing that will stop us is taxation and regulation, and they're both at the hands of the government, and we need less of them. Definitely not 1970s style interventionist, closed economy bureaucratism.
Leave the land alone.
Over here.
Well, I feel that ACT actually cut Rodney straight out of the scene when they amalgamated us with Auckland.
Sorry.
That's all I want to say.
So what's the question, sorry?
You did it. You amalgamated Rodney with Auckland. We don't want to be part of Auckland. We are just being raped up here for Auckland, for the boys' town. That's it. We don't need to be with you. So you started it.
Well, no, with respect, I did not. I wasn't in Parliament, but the amalgamation, the super city. I mean, if you elect the wrong mayor, things don't work out quite so well. But don't forget, Auckland, there are reasons why there might be amalgamations of lots of little councils. I grew up in Howick, actually. We had the Howick Borough Council, and I think it's quite a good thing we don't have the Howick Borough Council anymore, because it's far too small. But what I would say is that once things become government bills, that they get involved in projects, and I think Wellsford will benefit in the long run.
Yeah, we've got quite a few people up there tonight telling us what their policies are.
Yep.
You haven't really told us your policy. Not one of those, and there's only the lady to speak yet, and I have heard her on other occasions and she hasn't slung mud. None of those other men have slung mud tonight, and you have. We don't want to breathe in Northland.
No, but what I have done, I haven't lied to you. I haven't said to you that if you vote for me, I'm going to be able to deliver because I'll have the numbers in Parliament, because that's not true. I did tell you in broad spectrum of our policies. Our policies are for low taxation, low regulation. 12.5% company tax rate is going to double the wealth of every New Zealander within 15 years. And so if you want to solve issues, if you want to solve problems, you've got to go for economic prosperity, and that's the core of ACT. We have underrunning it, we have our education program, which has brought reform to the education system. The greatest reform in a generation has been brought through the Partnership Schools program. And that's making generational change. Children's lives are being absolutely changed for the better through the Partnership Schools program. So yes, I welcome your question about policies, but that's basically what the tenet is. Low taxation, more individual choice. We don't want a government telling us how to live our lives. I mean, you talk about Wellsford. Shouldn't Wellsford be in charge of Wellsford? Right? Does Wellsford have to rely on a government for this, that and the other thing? Wellsford needs to rely on Wellsford, and it's only under really ACT Party policies of freedom for communities, freedom for the individuals, freedom from regulation that will give you that. And so that's what our policies are, really. More individual, less government intervention in your life.
For your sake, please listen, it's all about you. We care about people, 'cause that's what we do. Don't feed the system that slaves you up more. These murderous bankers, they're proper hardcore.